On June 18, 1971, President Richard Nixon announced the war on drugs. It was supposed to reduce drug usage and help the social fabric of the United States. But 50 years later, drug overdose is at an all-time high. Jails and prisons are filled with first-time offenders who used illicit drugs. And every 25 seconds, someone in the United States is arrested for drug possession, tripled what it was in 1980. In 2021, the United States spent $1 trillion cumulatively to combat illegal drugs since 1971. Yet many people in America and much of the world is still using the addictive substances. The war on drugs destroyed communities and left many of its citizens in terminal poverty. And ironically, it has made drug cartels insanely wealthy. Mexican cartels make $500 million annually just from smuggling drugs from Mexico into the United States. This has made some members, such as Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, into a billionaire, and he was listed on Forbes magazine as one of the world's richest people. These cartels are so powerful that they can corrupt officials and bend communities to their will, making some parts of Latin America into narco states. So how is it, when governments are waging war against drugs, it inadvertently made cartels so rich and powerful? Well, you'll find out how throughout this video. Before we start, a lot of this video is based on the book Narconomics, How to Run a Drug Cartel. It is written by Tom Wainwright. This book dives deep into how drug cartels operate and make money, and provides a ton of fascinating information. So check it out. I'll put a link to it into the description. Part 1. The True Cost of Illegal Drugs. In the jungles of Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru, the coca plant grows abundantly. It can be used for medicinal purposes. Many people chew on coca leaves to relieve fatigue and to enhance physical performance. Other health benefits include improved stomach functions, relieving colds, and other ailments. And this is the raw material that is used to produce cocaine. According to the United States Customs and Border Protection, it is illegal to import coca leaves into America. Because of this, cocaine is produced in Colombia, Bolivia, which is then smuggled into the United States and the rest of the world. It takes anywhere from 450 to 600 kilograms of coca leaves to produce 1 kilogram of cocaine. The process of creating cocaine is relatively simple. All one has to do is to gather enough coca leaves, grind them down, add a mixture of chemicals such as gasoline and sulfuric acid to help extract the addictive substance, and then to dry the liquid to create a cocaine base. It is then powdered to create the final product. Although it is prohibited to harvest coca plants in Colombia, many farmers will still grow the plant because of its high profit margins compared to other crops such as corn or coffee beans. At times, growing and harvesting coca leaves is the only way for farmers to earn enough money to put food on the table and to provide for their families. People go great lengths to survive, even if it means breaking the law. Unfortunately, as farmers toil in the fields to grow and gather coca leaves, it is the drug cartels who reap most of the profits and benefits of selling cocaine. Drug cartels are monopsonies. It is where there are many sellers and one buyer. This is the opposite of a monopoly, in which there are many buyers and one seller. Legal businesses such as Walmart is a monopsony. Many producers sell to Walmart because of its large market share. Because of this, Walmart has leverage to negotiate lower prices for goods. And since many of its producers can only sell to Walmart, it has to accept the deal. A similar relationship occurs with coca farmers and drug cartels. Only a few drug cartels link the producers of cocaine, which are the coca farmers of South America, to the consumers of cocaine, which are the United States and the rest of the world. Drug cartels have massive negotiating power over the producers of cocaine. So, when the police destroy coca fields to restrict supply, it does not hurt the bottom line of cartels. They could always and would always command a certain price for coca leaves and cocaine. Instead, It just makes the lives of farmers much more miserable because now it is harder for them to make a living. In fact, by commanding a certain price for cocaine and other drugs such as methamphetamine and marijuana, the cartels can keep the price of illicit drugs stable. Governments can never win the war on drugs by restricting supply. It is unfortunate that cocaine, heroin, and other substances can be produced easily and are so addictive. The addictiveness of illegal drugs is what makes it demand inelastic. No matter the price of drugs, demand almost always stays the same. So, when countries try to eliminate the supply of illegal drugs, it makes the price extremely high and the consumers will continue to pay for it. This makes cartels extremely wealthy due to the high profit margins. Even if governments can make the supply of illegal drugs twice as expensive to produce, it will have little marginal effect on the final price of the product. To give an example, in the art market, some paintings can cost millions of dollars. Let's say an art piece is being sold for $10 million because some rich folks think this is how much the painting is worth. But then the government places a new regulation that makes a can of paint increase tenfold. So the can of paint goes from $50 to $500. So now the art piece is being sold for $10,450,000 instead of $10 million. This new paint regulation made the price of the artwork about 0.0045% more expensive. The same thing is being played out in the illegal drug market. Cocaine and other addictive substances are not expensive because of their intrinsic value, but rather their perceived value. Drug users will pay top dollar for a kilo of cocaine, like how rich people will pay top dollar for a piece of art. Even though cocaine is just chemicals extracted from a plant, and an art piece is just paint on a canvas. It is the perceived value of the product that matters. Part 2. The logistics of transporting illegal drugs. Trying to stop drug smuggling is an endless game of cat and mouse. Up until the mid-1980s, cocaine shipments were primarily flown in by small Piper and Cessna aircraft. Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel had a fleet of 140 airplanes, which would have flown several tons of cocaine per day through the Caribbean route. Once that route was closed off by US law enforcement, cocaine and other drugs were transported through Central America and Mexico and into the United States. Border agents would try and seize these drug shipments, but cartels will always find a way around it. In 2020, authorities discovered the longest tunnel at the US-Mexico border yet to be found. It was 70 feet deep and 4,000 feet long, and it was likely used to transport drugs such as heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamine. Since 2003, over 200 tunnels were discovered crossing between the borders, and building tunnels are often worth the investment. A tunnel like this would cost about $1 million to construct, but cartels can make back the money after just 2 shipments. Besides tunnels, convenient transportation modes such as freight trucks, planes, and ships are also used to transport drugs. And ironically, cartels and drug dealers use the US Postal Service to deliver their products to customers. And the strategy makes sense. Authorities can't go through millions of packages to find illegal drugs. It's just too time-consuming and expensive to do so. And here lies the problem with trying to stop the supply of drugs. Cartels have vast amounts of resources to invest in the logistics and transportation of the product. With the high profit margins of selling drugs, they can use that money to bribe officials, hire mules, whatever it takes to get the product to the designated market. And even if governments can make drugs harder to transport across the borders, it just makes it more expensive. And since its users will pay almost any price for drugs, it will enrich the cartels further, allowing them to have even more resources to transport their product. Part 3. The politics of drug cartels. Drug cartels operate like businesses. They sell products such as heroin, cocaine, and marijuana, and they sell their products to consumers internationally. And along the way, there are costs of doing business, like bribing authorities and paying people to transport their goods. Everything is peaceful as long as everyone is cooperating and the operation is running smoothly. But when there are disputes, That is where problems arise. If cartels have disagreements with each other, they can't just go to court and have a judge decide the matter. They must mediate among themselves. If mediation fails, this is when violence is used to solve disputes. Notice how cities in Mexico that border the United States are one of the most dangerous in the country. Juarez, Mexico has one of the highest murder rates in the world. Around 3,000 people are murdered each year in this city. And just across the border in El Paso, Texas, the city is among the safest in the United States. El Paso is so safe due to the massive number of law enforcement in the area, along with many agencies such as the DEA, the FBI, the CIA, and the Department of Homeland Security. Border cities in Mexico like Juarez and Tijuana are so dangerous due to the cartel-related violence. There are 48 border crossings between the United States and Mexico. Being in control of these entry points is crucial for the survival of the cartels. Without it, it may mean being knocked out of the drug business. This is why drug cartels fight so hard to gain control of border cities and towns. And it is also the reason why these areas are so dangerous. Unfortunately, many innocent civilians are killed during the crossfire. Some flee north in search of a better life. Part 4. How to solve the problems that illegal drugs cause. It is nearly impossible to fully eradicate the use of illegal drugs. We live in a world where cheap pleasures are easily accessible. From alcohol to pornographic films, people can get addicted to these things. Illegal drugs are no different. Unfortunately, substances such as cocaine and methamphetamine are so easily accessible. These drugs do not cost much to produce, but the profit margins are so high because governments artificially inflate prices, which inadvertently makes drug cartels rich. The way to win the war on drugs is to solve the problem on the demand side, rather than restricting supply. We can see the negative effects on how making other substances, such as alcohol, illegal. When the United States brought prohibition into effect in the 1920s, it was supposed to bring a new age of righteousness in America, where people are free from the sinful effects of alcohol. What resulted is that organized crime filled the void of providing alcohol to the masses. It increased corruption, made decent people into criminals, and filled prisons with people who drank booze. And there was even more death from alcohol overdose. People realized what a disaster prohibition was, and the United States government repealed it on December 5th, 1993 under the 21st Amendment. In the 1990s, Portugal was in the middle of a heroin epidemic. About 1% of the population were addicted, and Portugal had the highest HIV rate in the European Union. The government decided to take a hard stance on drugs like what the United States was doing, by implementing harsh measures on people who use heroin. What resulted was half the inmates in prison were in there due to drug-related charges. And the heroin epidemic was still as bad as before. Then Portugal made a radical change in 2001 when the government decriminalized all drugs. People who were addicted to drugs would have been treated like patients rather than criminals. Addicts were given clean doses of drugs, such as heroin, to aid them in rehab. The disease wasn't running rampant because users were not using dirty needles anymore. As a result, Portugal now has one of the lowest drug-related deaths in all of Europe. Let's hope countries such as the United Kingdom and the United States learn from Portugal's strategy on combating drug addiction. Cigarette usage has plummeted from 42% in 1965 to 14% in 2019, according to the CDC. This is due to the public health campaign to spread awareness on the negative effects of smoking. So it is possible to mitigate the problems of addicted drugs by providing rehab to the addicts. They should be treated like patients rather than criminals. And in the end, the world may be a better place.